All right, so I'm back at it. One of the things that fascinates me about human behavior is how quickly situations can spiral out of control. A moment that starts as an argument, it can turn into something life threatening in seconds. And there's a story that's coming out of Pennsylvania that really, just made me stop and think, where a woman allegedly ran over her ex-boyfriend with an SUV. And I think what makes this situation more disturbing is that his mother was sitting right there in the passenger seat as it all happened. So there had been some reports that the two had been drinking earlier that night, and at some point, an argument broke out, things escalated, and then within moments, a decision was made that changed lives forever. So let me just show you this, and then I'm gonna just give you my thoughts about it.
Tonight, disturbing new details on what police are calling an attempted homicide in Mount Washington.
Police say a woman intentionally ran over her ex-boyfriend with his mother in the passenger seat. He remains in critical condition.
Shelley Bortz is live where police say it all unfolded. Shelley.
Yeah, you can still see the evidence here tonight. These scrape marks on the sidewalk right in front of 632 Warrington Avenue are from the SUV, investigators say, when it jumped the curb and struck the victim.
Tonight, a man is fighting for his life. Police say Arnold Hardrick was found lying here in the middle of Warrington Avenue early Sunday morning, bleeding from the head, barely breathing. Moments earlier, they say, he had been run down by his own Chevrolet Tahoe, with his ex-girlfriend behind the wheel and his mother sitting in the front passenger seat.
Yeah, that's scary and that's crazy.
According to the criminal complaint, the SUV turned on Warrington Avenue from Route 51 and pulled over on the median. Hardrick and the driver, identified as Chanel Dyer, got out of the SUV where a physical altercation ensued. Dyer told police at that point she got back into the SUV and left the scene. But investigators say city surveillance video shows the SUV accelerating toward the victim, up over the curb and onto the sidewalk, dragging him onto the street before speeding away.
I see all the cops. I didn't know what happened until I went home.
Detectives later located the Tahoe parked outside Hardrick's house. In an interview, Dyer admitted she was driving and said they had been drinking at several bars before the incident. She claimed Hardrick assaulted her inside the SUV and again after they stopped, including choking her. Dyer acknowledged she saw him standing in front of the vehicle, but told detectives she was unaware she struck him before pulling back onto Warrington Avenue.
I think some people are really,
You jumped the curb,
bad
and
people.
you said you didn't know you hit him. That's crazy.
Hardrick suffered multiple internal injuries and a severe head injury. He remains in critical condition tonight. Dyer is charged with attempted homicide and aggravated assault. Reporting.
Man, how does she not know that she hit somebody? You said he was standing in front of the car, and then but the surveillance video got you jumping the curbs. So you hit something. I mean, and then just went home and parked the car like it was nothing. But when I hear a story like this, the first question that comes to mind, I think, is simple. It's, how do things escalate to that level? I mean, at some point, this was just an argument. Two people standing outside of a vehicle going back and forth with each other. They got physical. And then his mother sitting right there in the passenger seat watching all of this go down. And somewhere in that moment, somebody had to realize things were going too far. But that moment never came. Instead, the emotions kept rising and anger took over. Logic disappeared, and then on top of all of this, alcohol was involved. And when alcohol comes into play, it lowers your inhibitions. It weakens your judgment. Things that might normally seem like a terrible idea now seems like it's justified in that heat of the moment. When you really break this situation down, I mean, you got 3 adults, alcohol, an argument, which I guess turned physical, and then you got an SUV. All the ingredients were there for something to go wrong, and it did. Now you got one person fighting for his life in the hospital, another person potentially facing years in prison. And what really stands out to me is the mother sitting there in the passenger seat. I mean, just imagine being in that position, watching your son argue with somebody he used to be in a relationship with, and these emotions rising, the voices raised, and then just all of a sudden the vehicle that you're sitting in the passenger seat, you're sitting right there, it becomes part of the conflict. You know, that moment, I think, is something she will never forget. But this situation, I think, is a prime example of how one decision can change your life forever. Even if he makes a full recovery, I think there will be some long-lasting effects, physical injuries. He might even have to go through therapy, emotional trauma, and just the memory of what happened that night. And then on the other side of this situation is you got somebody who now has to face the legal consequences of that decision and their actions. And all of this, you know, stemming from one emotional moment during an argument. You know, you got to look at it like this, man. Arguments are temporary. Anger is temporary, but the consequences of what people do in those moments, they can last a lifetime. This shouldn't have happened. Somebody should have just said, hey, man, look, y'all need to stop, chill out, you know. And I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what the mother is doing, you know, while this is all going on. Maybe, I don't know, hopefully she was there, maybe trying to stop them, and not just sitting back and I don't know, just sitting back, not saying anything. I can't imagine her not saying anything. And then after the incident happened, like, what was she just thinking after you just sat there and witnessed this whole thing, to where this woman just ran over your son with his own vehicle? I mean, and then just went home and just parked the car and like it was nothing, and just left him on the street, you know, with his injuries. I don't know, man. People need to start making better decisions, but it's crazy, it's wild, and I just can't imagine just sitting there and you just being a witness to this whole thing. I mean, it's horrific. But yeah, y'all take care, stay safe, and just make better choices. Peace, y'all.